Analysis finds that Donald Trump speaks at the level of an 8-year-old. Wow, seriously? This is an article that has come out from The Independent. Now, the article is a year old. It was published in January of 2018, but I still feel that it's relevant to talk about it now. So what I will do, as usual, is I will read the article and then give you my thoughts. Here we go. Mr. Trump scores the lowest of any of the past 15 presidents. That's the subtitle of the article. Donald Trump may call himself a genius on Twitter, but his spoken statements say otherwise. This is me reading the article, and I'll have a discussion with you guys afterwards, so bear with me. An analysis of the president's first 30,000 words uttered in office found Mr. Trump speaks at a 3rd to 7th grade reading level. This is lower than any other president since 1929. Wow. Mr. Trump's vocabulary and grammatical structure is significantly more simple and less diverse than any president since Herbert Hoover, the analysis found. The comparison is based on interviews, speeches, and press conferences for every president dating back to 1929, compiled by an online database called FactBA.se. Analysis at FactBA.se. I don't know how to pronounce that, but I'll leave a link in the description box. You can read it for yourself. Studied the off-script remarks of all 15 men, essentially everything but their prepared speeches, to compare and contrast their speaking skills. So this is kind of saying that, they were catching them off guard. They were trying to work out how they would speak normally, without a teleprompter or without a written script, and they wanted to see how they spoke. Anyway, carrying on. Analysis ran the records through their 8 different tests for vocabulary complexity, diversity, and comprehension level. In every single test, this is every single test, Mr. Trump scored the lowest. Mr. Trump averaged significantly fewer syllables per word than the last 14 presidents and used significantly fewer unique words. The gaps appeared when comparing all available remarks and when comparing only the first 30,000 words of each presidency. Social media posts were excluded from the data. Compared to the 14 presidents who preceded him, by every measure, Mr. Trump's use of words when off-script are significantly less diverse and simpler than all presidents who preceded him back to Herbert Hoover, wrote the CEO of FactBA.se, CEO Bill Frischling. I should learn to pronounce these words before I get on the podcast. I do apologise. Maybe that's something that I need to work on a bit more. Anyway, carrying on. The topic of Mr. Trump's mental acuity has dominated the national conversation since the publication of Fire and Fury Inside the Trump White House, which is an explosive new book about the Trump administration. The author of the book, Michael Wolff, claims Mr. Trump's family, friends, and co-workers are regularly questioned about his fitness to serve. Mr. Trump disputed these claims via Twitter last week, claiming he was a very stable genius, of course, and really smart. Yeah, that is how an 8-year-old will normally speak, Mr. President, like, I'm a stable genius and I am like really, really smart. Kind of sounds like a girl that speaks before she becomes a teenager. He was supported by White House Press Secretary Sarah Huckabee Sanders, who called questions about the president's mental state outrageous. It's absolutely outrageous to make these types of accusations, and it's simply untrue. And it's sad that people are going and making these desperate attempts to attack the president, she stated in an interview on Fox and Friends. But many congressional Democrats and even some of Mr. Trump's fellow Republicans still refute the idea that the president is their intellectual superior. More than a dozen House and Senate Republicans declined to endorse Mr. Trump's claim that he was a genius in interviews with CNN on Monday. Republican Senator Jerry Moran, for example, said Mr. Trump was smart and capable at getting himself elected president. But when asked whether he was a genius, Mr. Moran replied, "Got nothing." So even he couldn't admit that the president was a genius. Wow. So there you have it, guys. I've just read the article for you. If you want the exact date when this article was published, it was Tuesday, the 9th of January, 2018. Wow. So what do I think? Well, I think that this goes to show that you don't have to be particularly smart to become president of the United States or a prime minister of this country. As long as you have plenty of money and plenty of power and influence, then you can become whatever you want to be, unless that's what people might take away from Mr. Trump's speaking level analysis. Now, I do want to point out that obviously Mr. Trump is a human being, so of course he's going to muck up words and, of course he's going to make mistakes. I mean, look at how many mistakes I make just making this podcast. And I'm sure you guys make mistakes as well when you're talking. But this guy is the president of the United States. I mean, it's kind of worrying that he speaks at an 8-year-old level. That is very worrying. And the fact that he's got loads of money and loads of power and influence just goes to show that he can take any job without doing any sort of test. He can just throw money at every problem. Now, you do have to point out that he's an old guy. He's in his 80s, in his 70s. I'll just check how old Donald Trump exactly is. Please bear with me. Just load it on to Google. Age of Donald Trump. Yeah, so he is 73 years old. And his birthday is the 14th of June, 1946. So there you have it, guys. He's a 73-year-old man, not a young man, so of course the older you get, the more your speech goes down, your speech gets terrible. That's all part of life. But again, President of the United States is very, very worrying. And the fact that his fitness to serve is always called into question is also another worrying thing that you guys need to bear in mind. I know that there are elections coming up in America, and maybe he will not win, maybe he will win. I mean, he is certainly very popular. He has been very popular. And I can see that this being a very tight race. So let me know what you guys think. Do you not care what his reading level is or speaking level is, as long as he's a confident enough president? I mean, I'm not a fan of Donald Trump myself, but I've got a report on the stories that come out. The story is a year old, but it's still relevant to this day. And if there's any more stories like this, I'll be sure to bring them to your attention. Thank you for listening, and please consider subscribing. Bye-bye.